Hey friends, I hope you're doing well and welcome back to another video. I am unbelievably excited for today's video because as you can tell by the title, it's the ultimate Christmas book gift guide. Now I love buying books and I love being able to gift books as presents for friends and family, but during Christmas time when you're already a little bit pressed on time, can just get a little bit overwhelming trying to find the perfect gift. So I thought that I would try to help you guys by coming up with the ultimate book gift guide. I think I've come up with maybe 22 to 25 different kinds of readers, so hopefully a loved one will fit into one of these different categories. So without further ado, do go grab yourself a cozy drink and let's get into the video. Okay, so first up we have for the one who doesn't really read books but are interested in getting into them. I decided to include this because I know that there are a lot of people who maybe aren't necessarily bookworms yet, but they've maybe talked about wanting to read a couple more books this year or for next year. But for that person in your life, I have Every Day I Read by Hwang Bodum. This is by the same author who wrote Welcome to the Hyunondo Bookshop, which is also a lovely book, but is essentially a collection of very short essays and just ponderings from the author herself about what it means to be a reader or different ways people can really get into reading and start to enjoy books. I'm currently in the middle of reading this right now and it's great for people who are already readers, but I feel like it's really special for people who have a desire to get into reading but aren't quite in it themselves yet. Each chapter is bite-sized, maybe 1 or 2 to 3 pages long, and it's really easy to read. So it's perfect for someone who maybe has to commute a lot. It would be a great commute read. I remember early on there's a chapter dedicated to helping people to fall in love with reading for the first time, and yeah, it's such a cozy, comforting read and it's just so reflective and wonderfully put together, so highly recommend Every Day I Read. Next up we have someone who is on the complete opposite end of the scale, and this person is probably a huge bookworm to the point where you're a little bit scared of getting a book for them in case they've already read it. So for that person, I have here with me 3 Summers by Margarita Liberacki. 3 Summers is a modern Greek classic that hopefully they haven't read before, and I did double check on Goodreads. I believe it's only got about 3,000 ratings or so the likelihood of them having read it is quite low, but it's a very picturesque and dreamy story about 3 sisters who grow up near Athens in the countryside, and across 3 different summers you see them as they grow up and they interact and they fall in love. So it's a coming of age story set just before World War II, and I thoroughly enjoyed reading this. The writing in this book is just so sublime and I really understand why it's lauded as a classic in Greece. I feel like it's a very special little book and I hope that whoever you give this book to also really enjoys their time with it. But before we get further into the video, I want to thank today's sponsor, Linjer. Linjer is a really wonderful jewelry company and they sent me a couple of their pieces to try on and share with you guys. If you've been wondering what I'm wearing right now, I've got 2 of their earrings on as well as their gorgeous opal necklace, but I love them so much. I feel like they're so delicate and dainty and beautiful. So I'll insert some b-rolls and do a short voiceover for you guys so you can see them in closer detail. Linjer comes from the Norwegian word that means lines, and it highlights their simple and minimal designs made to luxury standards but with more affordable prices. They use sustainable materials like recycled gold and silver for their jewelry, as well as using recycled and sustainable packaging, and the packaging experience is really wonderful as you can see from these clips. All the pieces come individually wrapped in this navy blue pouch, which again just reflects the quality of these pieces and it just makes it feel that extra bit special. When I was a lot younger, I used to be all about loud jewellery, but over the past 5 or 6 years now, I've definitely gravitated more and more towards dainty and delicate pieces. So I was so excited to choose a few of their items. One of the pieces I selected was this October birthstone necklace, and it features an Ethiopian opal pendant. But the necklace is adjustable, and I was born in July, not October, but I personally love opals, so I decided to go go for the opal necklace instead of the ruby one for July, and I'm really glad I did because it's going to pair so beautifully with everything that I own. I also haven't worn earrings in a very long time, but I really loved how dainty the linjered earrings looked. So I thought that I'd get the matching opal stone gold earrings, and I'm obsessed with how cute they look. I think this might be my favorite piece. I've just been loving wearing it so much. And I also have more than one piercing on each ear, so I thought it'd be really sweet to pick out this chain earring. It features a gold chain loop, so it's slightly different from things that you'd normally find, and it also adds a bit of texture and fun to the ears. I'm honestly so delighted with these 3 pieces, and I love knowing that they'll last me a really long time. But on top of all of this, I was also able to pick out this lovely mini travel case that I was really excited to see on their website, because whenever I travel, I've never really had a place to keep my rings and necklaces safe, and they always end up getting really tangled. So now with this gorgeous tan colored mini case, I can keep everything organized when I'm on the go. It's made from vegan leather and lined with beige velvet, so it's a great add-on item if you're thinking of purchasing any of Linjer's jewelry. Gifting jewelry to loved ones can be such a sentimental keepsake, so if you're looking to invest in beautiful, long-lasting pieces, then I hope you enjoy browsing through Linjer's gorgeous collection. And you can also use my code Ahya and it will get you a special offer, so do make sure to visit the link in the description box below. I'll leave all the details there, and thank you so much to Linjer again. I've been wearing these pieces non-stop since I first received them, and I hope that it makes a really wonderful Christmas present for a loved one or as a treat for yourself. And now let's get back into the video and talk all things books. So next up, I have 2 books for the one who never seems to have enough time to read. This is sort of along similar veins of the very first book I recommended for the one who doesn't really read, but with this one I was hoping more to target the friend or family member who does enjoy reading. They're just really short on time. But for that person, I want to recommend The Man Who Planted Trees as well as The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly. Both of these are incredibly short. They're under 100 pages and they're more, I guess, like short stories. But the first of these, The Man Who Planted Trees, is a French classic and is set in the French Alps. But in it, our narrator comes across a shepherd who is determined to plant 100 acorns a day with the hopes that the desolate region in which he lives will be reforested and transformed one day. Nothing can stop him, including 2 world wars in which he still continued to stay behind and plant trees every day. And by the end of the story, you see how his persistence paid off and really helped to transform and bring renewal and hope into the lives of everybody around him. It's a very poignant short story about determination and hope and not giving up. So it's a great message to give as a gift, and hopefully because it's so short it won't be a burden at all. Sometimes when you get given a really thick book it can be a little bit scary. But the other book was The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly by Hwang Sung-mi, and this is a Korean story. This book has often been pitched as the Korean Charlotte's Web, but in it you follow a hen called Sprout. The Sprout lives on this farm and she decides one day that she is no longer content to continue to just lay eggs only for them to be carted off in the morning, and she decides to come up with this plan to escape the farm and be a free hen and lay and hatch eggs all by herself. I've heard that it's a very popular and well-known book in Korea, and the book actually shines a lot on Korea as a society because it touches a lot on motherhood as well as individuality versus being a part of society, and it touches a lot on the concept of freedom as well. Both this book and The Man Who Planted Trees have really wonderful timeless illustrations that I feel like really will help the reader to be more immersed and engaged with the story, and they also make really wonderful gifts. So hopefully those 2 books are great for people who are really busy in your life. Next up, we have the one who really loves reading translated fiction, and for that person in your life, I've got Heaven by Mieko Kawakami. This book is a Japanese contemporary lit fiction graphic novel following two different students who, for their different reasons, are really struggling at school. It's told through the lens of a 14-year-old boy who is relentlessly tormented by his classmates for having a lazy eye, and the only person who seems to be able to understand him or wants to get close to him at all is a girl in his class who is also similarly being bullied by her classmates. The two grow closer and have a sort of dependency on each other since there is no one else who really understands their current situation. But at the same time, there's a lot of philosophical ponderings about what this friendship really could mean and whether it's healthy or not, because of the fact that it comes from a place of deep terror and hurt. It's definitely a heavier book with the portrayals of bullying and expectations and just being a little bit different from what society has in mind for you. But I found it to be deeply moving and tender and a little bit difficult to stomach actually at some times, because it's a very vivid portrayal of bullying. So maybe do keep that in mind and be sensitive towards the person you might be considering giving this book to. But I definitely think it's worth reading, and it's very short as well, and yeah, it's great for somebody who maybe wants to expand into more Japanese literature or already loves Japanese literature. Now, next up is for the reader who only reads non-fiction. I feel like we all have that friend who does enjoy reading, but they only like to read non-fiction books. But for that person, I have A Woman in the Polar Night by Christian Ritter. But this is a travel memoir depicting the adventures and journeys of Christian Ritter, who for a year spent her life in the Arctic. She was an Austrian painter, and in 1934 she decided to leave her comfortable home in Austria in exchange for joining her husband in the Arctic for an entire year. She goes there a little bit naively at first, thinking that it's going to be really restful and she'll have tons of times to read and catch up on her favourite books. But upon arriving there, she realises that a lot of the time she's going to have to spend it completely by herself in the wild. But by the end of this trip, she realises that there is this otherworldly sense of peace that comes from living in such a harsh environment for an entire year, and the things that she used to prioritize is no longer what she finds the most important in life. Because she's a painter, I feel like she has such an incredible way of expressing the Arctic landscape, so the nature in it is very memorable, and I feel like it'll be a really lovely memoir to gift to someone. It's very inspiring and there's a lot to learn from it, so hopefully it makes a good gift for your friend or family member who only reads non-fiction. Okay, so next up is for the Sally Rooney lover in your life, and for that person I've got Happy All the Time by Laurie Colwin. Some people have been talking and describing this book as a 1970s equivalent of Sally Rooney, which I really agree with. It follows two couples and four different friends and the ways in which they grow together. It highlights episodes of them falling in love and their arguments, and I think at the end of the day, it's really an exploration of them trying to figure out how to be happy all the time. It's really witty and charming and tender, and I feel like there are so many good quotes in here about love. And I feel like in Sally Rooney's books, they often tend to explore like difficult relationships or complex human emotions, and I feel like Laurie Colwin writes in a very beautiful way. So if your loved one adores Sally Rooney, then I think they'll also really fall in love with Happy All the Time. Now, next up, I've got a book for the person in your life who is a little bit like Rory Gilmore in that they've read a lot of different classics. So for that classic lover in your life, I want to recommend Oscar Wilde's Only Dull People Are Brilliant at Breakfast. To be honest, all of these Penguin classics are really great choices, and you get a selection of them, and I think they'd really love it. But this tiny, absolutely minuscule little book is a collection of different sayings and writings from Oscar Wilde. It has some really pithy sayings and lets you dive in a little bit deeper into Oscar Wilde's thoughts. So maybe if they're an Oscar Wilde fan, they'll really appreciate this tiny little book. For example, this one is quite funny. It says, "She talks more and says less than anybody I ever met. She is made to be a public speaker." So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a gist of the tone of this book. But next up is a book for the seasonal reader in your life, and it's called A Holiday Holiday by Gaslight by Mimi Matthews. I know that there are a lot of us who really loves reading according to the different seasons, and because it's Christmas time, I thought that this historical fiction Victorian Christmas romance story would be a really lovely one to settle with, maybe by the fire and wearing warm cozy socks. But it's a novella following Sophie, who is quite willing and open to marry outside of her class if it means that she's able to gain financial security for her family. So along comes Edward Sharp, who is a very wealthy tradesman, and the two of them have a 2-month-long courtship that ends in disaster. But Sophie decides to give Edward one last chance at their annual Christmas party at Apposite House. I read this for the first time last year and I found it to be a really cozy and comforting romantic book, and I also believe that it was inspired initially by North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. If a person you're thinking of giving this to enjoys a light, sweet romance that's swoon-worthy and is filled with English manners and countrysides with holiday snow, then I think they'll really enjoy this one. And this next book is kind of similar, but it's for a friend who loves a good Hallmark movie. And for that person, I've got here with me The Winter Cottage by Rachel Lucas. This is a really heartwarming, feel-good, light novel set in the Scottish Highlands, so it has that wonderful wintry atmosphere. But in it we follow Rilla, whose father recently passed away, and so she leaves New England and travels to Scotland where he lived to try and sort out his affairs, and she plans for the stay to be a very brief one, but she ends up bumping into Lachlan, whom she hasn't seen in over 15 years. So they were friends when they were younger, but then Rilla moved to America, so yeah, they haven't seen each other since. Lachlan's family own this very grand house that is crumbling by the minute, and he's trying to find a way to try and keep the house without having to sell it. I listened to this book as an audiobook and it gave me everything that I was looking for at the time. It's very cute, and I think the highlight of it is how Christmassy and wintry it felt with the Scottish Highlands and Scottish winter. So if your loved one really enjoys watching a cute Hallmark movie this time of year, then I think The Winter Cottage is a very romantic one. Now the next category is for the reader in your life who really enjoys healing fiction novels. And now healing fiction is a specific subgenre that originated from Japan and South Korea, but the focus of those novels tend to be on mundane, ordinary moments of someone's life, and it's usually set in a very cozy setting like a bookshop or a cafe. I feel like, at least in the Western world, we sort of know what the major books in this subgenre are, like Before the Coffee Gets Cold, so I've got one hopefully that isn't as well known, but it's called Goodnight Tokyo by Atsuhiro Yoshida. But this is a Japanese contemporary story, and it's like an interwoven short story, as a lot of these novels tend to be, meaning that you follow different characters in each chapter and you get to see by the end of the book how all the characters sort of link with each other. The backdrop of this story is the neon lit sky of Tokyo, so the book is set during the midnight hours of 1 in the morning to 4:30, and you follow a cast of different characters who are for one reason or another up and working during these night hours. There's a sense of humming magic in the air, as there tends to be often in the fantastical and whimsical hours of 1 to 4 in the morning. It's a time of day or night that not many of us are awake in, but for the insomniacs and for the night workers, this is their daytime, and so it adds to the enigmatic way in which this story is told, especially because it is interwoven like I mentioned, so you don't really know how the characters are linked with each other until the end, and it's satisfying to see it come together. I thought there was something very attractive about this novel, and to be fair, I'm very much drawn to any books about the topic of nighttime, so yeah, that might be why, but hopefully your loved one will enjoy it as well. Okay, next up is for the person in your life who is a romantasy reader, and they've probably already read a lot of the ones that are popular on BookTok. So for that person, I've got here with me Dreams Lie Beneath by Rebecca Ross. Quite a few of Rebecca Ross's novels are very well known now and beloved by many, but Dreams Lie Beneath is a YA fantasy or romantasy that's just as dreamily written as a lot of her other luscious books are, but one that's not as well known. This book has been described by a lot of people to be really perfect for fans of The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, as well as the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber. But in this world, there is a curse where every new moon, magic flows down a nearby mountain and ends up bringing nightmares to life. And the only people who are able to protect the people from these nightmares are magicians who are trained to act sort of as wardens. And in it you follow Clementine, whose father is one of these magicians, except one day two young magicians come to challenge her father's rights over this territory, and so there's a bit of rivalry and that enemies relationship here. And I also really was fascinated by the magic system in this book. It's definitely not your typical very heavy fantasy. It's more subtle, as also for instance in The Night Circus and Caraval, and because it's a standalone novel, it's a really good one to give as a gift. Next up is for the reader who also enjoys fantasy but not so much romantasy, and for that person I've got here with me R.F. Kuang's The Poppy War. This book technically does have romance in it that I really enjoy, but it's definitely more of a subplot. But if your loved one really likes an epic fantasy, especially one that's historical fiction based and is also like a military school, then I think they'll love this one. But this book follows Rin, who is an orphan from the Rooster province, but she aces the Kuju, which is like an empire-wide test, and it searches for the nation's most intelligent and strong individuals. Those who pass the test are able to join the most elite military school in Nikan, and so when Rin gets in, she shocks everybody around her, and unfortunately for Rin, she ends up having to face so much prejudice and bullying from her classmates who are all from much more wealthier and well-known provinces. That is until one day she discovers that she has access to these unearthly powers, and this becomes even more important once the third Poppy War comes around. Like I mentioned, this is an epic historical fantasy, so if the person that you're thinking of really enjoys big series, this is a trilogy, so there's a lot for them to dive into. And as you can expect from an R.F. Kuang book, there is a lot of political intrigue and commentary, so it's definitely not your average fantasy novel. Next up, we're moving into sci-fi. So for the sci-fi lover in your life, I've got Flowers for Algernon. This has become a bit of a classic in the sci-fi world, and I'm personally quite new to sci-fi, but I really love this book. It follows Charlie Gordon, whose IQ is 68 and he's often the butt of everybody's jokes. But one day he learns of this human intelligence experiment that will turn someone into a genius, and so he signs himself up for it. It's really heartbreaking seeing Charlie go through the different stages of intelligence and him coming face to face with what it means to be intelligent and what it means essentially to be human. Like I mentioned, I'm quite new in the sci-fi genre and I personally don't necessarily love sci-fi, but these kind of sci-fi novels are more aligned with my taste, and I feel like it's really fitting for anybody. So I recommend it both for the sci-fi readers and the non-sci-fi readers in your life, since this is like a modern classic. Next up is for the horror readers in your life, and I've sort of jokingly put in brackets as the person whose reading taste concerns you. But for that person, I have Cursed Bunny by Paula Chung, and it happens to blur the lines between magical realism and horror as well as sci-fi, so it's got a little bit of everything. Cursed Bunny is one such story in this collection, and I found it to be kind of disturbing but in a very charming way. I feel like it gives you a little bit of insight into the horror landscape or horror literary landscape of Korean literature. I'm not the best when it comes to short stories because not every short story keeps me engaged, but I found this collection to be very bizarre but also very attractive at the same time. So I feel like this one is a really good one to gift the horror readers in your life because there's not just one horror story in it, there are 10. Okay, next up we have a book for the friend who really enjoys whimsical, slightly weird books, aka magical realism, and for that friend I've got The Rainfall Market. I've got here with me the Korean edition of the book, and it's quite interesting because in the Korean they put the English title as The Rainbow Goblin Stool, but the copy of it in the West has been marketed as The Rainfall Market. But this book explores the idea of there being a market that opens on the first day of the rainy season and it's only by invitation, so not everybody can enter, However, for those who do have the opportunity of going to the market and purchasing things that will hopefully change their lives, this book feels very Studio Ghibli coded because of its magical nature. This book wasn't necessarily my favorite magical realism book out there, but I thought that the world building and the concepts were really fun to read about. So if the person in your life enjoys reading about slightly weird, wondrous, magical things, then I do recommend The Rainfall Market. Okay, next up, I've got a book for the historical fiction lover in your life, and for that reader, I've got Claire Keegan's Small Things Like These. If there is a time to pick this book up, it is during Christmas time because it takes place during Christmas in Ireland. But the book is set in 1985 in an Irish town, and our main character is Bill Furlong, and Bill is a coal merchant whose busy season happens to be the Christmas season. So as he goes around delivering coal to all the different houses in the town, Bill ends up coming face to face with a lot of the things that were buried in his past, and the story also explores how the church has controlled this small community. This book has a great moral message, and it's written in a very hauntingly yet very beautiful way that's full of hope, and it also happens to be very short and a modern literary classic, I feel like. So I do think that it's a really great one to gift someone, and I know that last year they did like these special gift editions of Small Things Like These where the covers were like in like a red and green, so maybe that can make a really good Christmas present, and this story is definitely worth reading. Next up is a book for the dark academia reader in your life, and I've got In These Hallowed Halls, which is a dark academia anthology. It's edited by Marie O'Regan and Paul Kane, but it features some very famous authors in the dark academia landscape. So we've got short stories from Olivia Blake and M.L. Rio and lots more authors. There are 12 stories in total, and some of them I preferred over others, but I feel like if the person you're thinking of really loves dark academia, then they've already probably read a lot of the dark academia classics like The Secret History and If We Were Villains. So I think they might appreciate a collection like this one because it means they get to read from some of their favorite authors. Now the next category is for the young reader in your life, or for those who are young at heart, because I feel that we could all do with a good middle grade book. But for this category, I've got two books, one being Ember and the Ice Dragons and the other being Crookhaven. I'll start with Crookhaven first, but the first book in this series is called The School for Thieves. But in this story, you follow Gabriel, who is a pickpocket, but one day he gets invited to join this school for thieves called Crookhaven. The school teaches lessons like forgery and gymnastics, and the whole point is that these thieves will go out into the world and do good for society. And at Crookhaven, there is the Crooked Cup competition, but Gabriel realizes that he can't win this competition alone, so he decides to assemble this crew of multi-talented misfits, and it's such an entertaining series. I always love a book about misfits, and I love the characters in Crookhaven, and I especially love the world building in it. Getting to see the different classes that we're taking was really amusing to read about, and I feel like the young readers in your life will have a really good time reading it. Alternatively, I've got Ember and the Ice Dragons by Heather Fawcett, and now Heather Fawcett is the author who wrote the Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia to Fairy series, but this is her middle grade standalone novel about a girl called Ember. And if you've read the first book to the Emily Wilde series, you'll know that Heather Fawcett writes beautifully, especially when it comes to snowy landscapes. And so this book is perfect for winter and for Christmas as well, because it's set in the snowy landscape of Antarctica. In it, you follow Ember, who was a dragon, but her father, who is a magician, changed her into a human in order to save her life. But Ember still has dragon tendencies, and so she's really prone to setting things on fire. Unfortunately, it gets to the point where it's a little bit dangerous for her to remain in London, and so the plan is for Ember to go visit her aunt in Antarctica, where she'll hopefully be safe from catching on fire. Whilst there, Ember realizes that there is an annual hunt for the ice dragons of the area, and Ember is furious about this, and so she decides to go undercover and sabotage it from the inside. And along the journey, she meets a really wonderful cast of characters and friends. So if you're looking to gift a more seasonal read, I really recommend Ember and the Ice Dragons. You guys, I've been filming for so long that the phone died, so I had to charge it for a little while, hence why the sun has fully set. it. But for this next category, we've got the audiobook readers in your life. I really love listening to audiobooks as I'm doing chores, and my husband also is a huge fan of audiobooks and is really the only way in which he consumes stories. So if you've got someone like my husband in your life, then I recommend two different books. One is Educated by Tara Westover, which is a memoir, and the other one is a middle grade fantasy series. It's the Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend. But in Educated, you follow Tara and her journey to becoming educated. The first time Tara Westover ever stepped inside a school classroom was when she was 17, because up until that point, her parents, or her mum in particular, had been homeschooling her. Sorry, I think I'm just gonna go turn the lights on because I feel like it's getting a little bit too dark in here. Okay, hopefully that's a little bit better now. But Tara, like I was saying, grew up in a Mormon family. However, as time passes and seeing her older brothers leave the house, Tara is determined to try and educate herself. And so over the decades, you see Tara have to go through this very painful experience of seeing how getting herself an education is also simultaneously causing a lot of friction within the family. The reason why I'm recommending this for the audiobook lover in your life is because I feel like having someone narrate it in the first person is a very intimate experience. But the narrator of the audiobook is Julia Whalen, and she does a really incredible job of bringing the different people in Tara Westover's life to life. But I also do really recommend as an audiobook Nevermore, The Trials of Morgan Crow, which is book number 1. This is a middle grade fantasy, but the reason why I thought I would include it here is because it has the most incredible narrator. The Nevermore series is up to book 4 right now, and I'm currently actually in the middle of listening to Silverborn, but it's all narrated by the incredible Gemma Whalen. Gemma Whalen puts on the best voices for the different characters in the Nevermore series, and I really find it difficult to read the books without thinking of the voices and the accents that she puts on for the different members. But this series follows Morgan Crow, who is destined to die on her 11th birthday because she is cursed, or everybody believes that she's cursed. However, when the clock strikes 12, a mysterious man called Jupiter North ends up whisking Morgan away to a secret city called Nevermore. There she undergoes a series of trials to get into the Wondrous Society, which is like a society for people with magical knacks and gifts. But the only problem is that Morgan thinks that she doesn't have a knack. This is truly one of the best middle grade series out there right now that is still being released, and I highly recommend it if someone really loves Harry Potter. Next up on this list is for the manga or graphic novel reader in your life, and for this one I've got When Stars Are Scattered by Omar Mohammed and illustrated by Victoria Jameson. This graphic novel is inspired by the real life story of Omar Mohammed, the author, who was a refugee in Kenya. But in it you follow Omar and his younger brother Hassan as they live their lives in a refugee camp. Now at first Omar thought that the refugee camp would be a temporary place, except he, alongside his brother, have been at the camp for more than 7 years already. So it's a very poignant and sensitive story, really about what it's like living in a refugee camp day to day, the lack of resources and the lack of food and the constant sense of waiting and not knowing what's going to happen next. So when Omar finally has the opportunity to go to school, he decides to go for it, and he knows that it might have the power to change his life as well. It's a really important story to read about, and as you can tell, it's really lovingly illustrated as well by Victoria Jameson. So I do really recommend this one, and I feel like not a lot of people have talked about it. This stack behind me is a little bit precarious now, and I'm a bit terrified it's going to just topple over. But next up, I only have a couple more books left to share with you guys. But for the artist or creative person in your life, I've got Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Maria Rilke. But this is a collection of actual letters that Rilke wrote to a very young poet who had written to him asking for some advice when it came to his poetry, and in turn Rilke ended up giving advice not just on writing, but what it means to be an artist and what it means to be a writer, as well as on life and love. I feel like this is such a little book to keep in the arsenal of every writer or creative person. It's filled with poignant and reflective advice, and it's also a book that I often recommend to my friends, and most of them, if not all of them, have come back saying that they really enjoyed it as well. So I definitely wanted to give this one a shout out in case you've got an artist in your life. And last but not least, I have 3 books here with me, all for the fellow Christian brother or sister in your life. Christmas is a time of year where a lot of us reflect on the year gone by and the things that we're grateful for friends and for family. But as Christians, Christmas is an even more pressing time for us to reflect and deepen our understanding of what it meant for Christ to come into the world. So the 3 books I want to recommend are slightly different from one another, but we'll start with this one. This is Dane Ortland's Gentle and Lowly. And fun fact, I was able to actually illustrate Dane Ortland's parents' first picture book, and it's called Your Family is God's Plan. This is a really precious book that explores the heart of Jesus. On the blurb of this book, it talks about how Christians know what Jesus has done, but a lot of the times we don't really know Jesus's heart and his heart for sinners and for people. But Jesus says that he is gentle and lowly in heart, and so Dane Ortland explores in a very beautiful way what that really means for us as Christians now. For those who are hurting and bruised, this book is really one that I recommend because it's like a soothing balm for the soul, and it also happens to be a very beautiful book with a beautiful cover. So that's Gentle and Lowly. But if you are looking to give someone more of a book that explored Christmas and the nativity scene itself, I do recommend Tim Keller's Hidden Christmas. This little book explores what the nativity really means for us because it's a very commonly referred to scene in popular culture, but Tim Keller digs into the background of the nativity and how it's life-changing for us. So it's definitely a very fitting book to give someone this Christmas season. And then last but not least, if you wanted to either get yourself a devotional or gift somebody a devotional for Christmas, I've got The Christmas We Didn't Expect by David Mathis. There are 24 daily readings and prayers in here that are really wonderful to either go through by yourself, or you could also do it with friends and family, which would be a really wonderful communal thing to experience together. But the aim of this little book is to renew your wonders of Jesus during the Advent season. I know that for many of us, we are very familiar with the Christmas story to the point where we become numb to it, and so David Mathis tries to refresh our spirits and our souls with the hopes that it would enable us to marvel at the coming of Jesus into this world. And with that completes the ultimate Christmas book gift guide for every kind of reader in your life. I hope that it was helpful in some ways, and hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this huge video. And thank you also again to Linjer for sponsoring today's video. Do make sure to check out all the details in the link below. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and I'll see you guys in the next cozy video very soon. Bye friends.